No contact just sucks on so many levels. And it does. It really does. No contact is it's no joke. Have you ever tried going non-contact? Or have you ever tried experiencing non-contact from someone else? Maybe this video is for you. Who knows? This video is a little different from what I usually do. I usually do a vintage story, though I have been wanting to do some Minecraft content lately, and especially on the mod pack that I'm playing, which is Terraformagre. This is just the world that I'm playing on right now. If I ever made a series, I would make a new world. So yeah, this is perhaps a little different than what I usually do. How do I even begin this? I'm not really sure, but I am just going to take you down into my iron mine, and then I guess we'll just get started on it. So the reason why I'm making this video is because I just wanted to talk, really. Nothing too crazy about that, I guess. As I said, this is a little different than what I do usually. I don't really usually talk this kind of way, at least on camera. That is very weird. Anyways, if you're unfamiliar with the term no contact, it is really what it says on the label. You don't contact someone, or you don't get contacted by someone. So a good example would be if you have an abusive ex, especially an abusive ex-boyfriend, but that's another talk, I guess. But if you have an abusive ex or something, and you need to get away from them, you may need to go no contact with them. Now, why would you go non-contact with a person? Well, there are many reasons why you may go non-contact with a person. The first one being that they don't respect your boundaries. So an example again would be, I don't really appreciate that you're constantly texting me or calling me. Could you please stop doing that? And they don't respect that. Or it could be that whenever you are with them, they do something to you. That could be anything, just as long as that meeting or that interaction with that person has left you with a negative experience. And that may be a reason why you would go non-contact with someone. And in my case, that is my parents. I have throughout my life really, I wouldn't say been bothered by my parents, but my parents have always treated me in a way that, first of all, like I said, didn't respect my boundaries. They didn't really respect my, what's the name? What's the word? The English word for it? That, yeah, you're a person. My free will, maybe. I'm not really sure that I fully remember the English word for it. And so, because of that, I have needed to go completely non-contact with them. And it sucks. It really does, because what that essentially means is that my parents that raised me, that gave life to me, I can't have a relationship with. And I wish that I could, but obviously I don't feel like I can, otherwise I wouldn't have made the decision to go non-contact with them. And it just sucks because, you know, especially when it comes to your parents, you want them to love you and you want to love them, but sometimes reality and expectation just don't really align when you try to force expectations in reality or to reality in a way that doesn't align in any way, usually you end up with these pretty rough, I guess you could call it, these points of conflict where things will just turn toxic really fast. And sometimes each person involved may not realize how toxic that is. And in the case of me and my parents, that is my parents. I tried for many years to explain my grievances. Oh, that's apparently a difficult word for me. My grievances with my parents and the way that they would treat me. And sometimes I'd be met with, "Oh, we're sorry," or we had no idea you felt that way," or something akin to that. Let me just kill this guy. Click over. But mostly what I would be met with was just, how do I put this? A reluctance, I guess, or really just an inability to take any kind of responsibility for that, or just, "We're sorry that you feel that way," or, "Oh, we just love you. That's why we push you," or "We say these things," or we just want what's best for you." And I would often try to just explain that I have told you what I need from you, and what you're giving me is not what I need. I need something else. I need a different kind of care. That's not to say that you can't have a relationship with people where you need one thing from them and they give you something else, and maybe that's fine. We can't always be what we want from people, I guess. I don't know where I'm really going with that. What I just mean is that, again, expectation versus reality, especially in relationship, is just a difficult balance. But after experiencing way too much disappointment, really, in terms of how I've been treated by my parents, I made the difficult decision of telling them, "Please don't contact me." And in some ways they did respect that. I didn't hear from them at all. And it's gonna sound paradoxical, or is that the right word? I don't know. It feels like paradoxical, I guess is the word. I don't know. That I was expecting more. There obviously some part of me wanted my parents to fight for, their child. But obviously I was also very relieved that in a way they were actually respecting my wishes. But that turned out to be a temporary thing, really. Because after a few months, 4, I think, they did contact me with a message that was incredibly disappointing. And I'm not gonna go over all of it, but it was basically, no responsibility, no accountability, or really any kind of apologizing for anything, and also completely missing the point about how I said that I wasn't interested in our relationship, and they apparently had taken that as I didn't want a relationship with my family. And while that is true, The rest of my family is much like my parents, so I don't really wish to have any contact with them as well, or either. That wasn't really the point, you know. I'm not really too hung up about the fact that I'm not going to be seeing my uncles and aunts and cousins. I didn't really have a relationship with them to begin with anyway, so that doesn't really matter all that much to me. But apparently that's what my parents seem to be the real issue. So to sum that up, it's basically just the point, an airplane flying right above them, you know, which is the essence of why I decided to go non-contact. But I wanted to make this video because it sucks. It's very, very difficult when you become reminded of those few moments where the relationship you had with those people weren't terrible, I guess is a way to say that. So in my case, it would be being reminded of just a good time with my parents, say a vacation or an excursion or something like that, or just an everyday memory where things weren't just really not fun for me at the very least. And that sucks. It sucks to be reminded of those moments, only to also be reminded that those things kind of exist in a vacuum. To put more perspective into why that's difficult for me, or just why it was difficult for me to reconcile these feelings when it comes to my parents, is that I am a person with a few, shall we say, different yet similar mental health issues. I'm not gonna bother going into all of it, so otherwise we'd probably be here all day. But one thing that is sort of important for me is the fact that I do suffer from major depressive disorder, or suffer from, I just, yeah, I don't know. It's something that I deal with, or try to anyway, and that is on top of being born autistic and being denied that reality by my parents, as an example. Well, not really as an example, but as the people. I don't know. It's very difficult for me to really explain it. Maybe I should have written a script or something. I don't know. The main point is just that it sucks. And my everyday is pretty much impeded by these restrictions, I guess you could say. That's a kind of a nicer word for it. But also one of the reasons why I wanted to just express my thoughts and feelings about no contact is that it does really, really, really suck when you are the person that decides to go no contact. But it also really, really sucks when you are the person that is being no contacted. And that goes extra, I would say, at least, if you understand and respect why that person has decided to do that. Because that recently happened to me. My best friend and really life partner of 7 years decided that they would like to go non-contact with me. And they had very good reason to want to do that. We had a good long, not discussion, conversation is probably the best word for it. And I really respect that person and their wishes, and I support their decision to do that. and I expect them to probably feel the same way that I do right now, that it really, really sucks. It sucks to lose your best friend, and it sucks to know that you probably won't see them. Now, I have personally dealt with loss before. I lost my cousin and kind of brother, to me at least. In my case, at least, my cousin was always more or less a brother to me than my actual brother was. I lost my cousin when I was 9. He died of well, I don't really know what the English word for it is, but when you go into shock because of you have diabetes, and he was asphyxiated, unfortunately. And I have also lost other family members that I cared a lot about. So I do, that's not really to try and legitimize my feelings because, well, I guess it is. Let's be honest. It is a way for me to try and legitimize my feelings, even though I don't really need to. But my point is that I had this conversation with my good friend, and I understand where they're coming from, and I respect them. I respect their feelings, and I understand their feelings, and I wish them nothing but the best. And I definitely see why doing that or making that decision is actually beneficial. Probably even for me as well. But it's just a sucky feeling. And if you yourself have ever struggled with, experienced, or are experiencing any kind of depression or just depressive feelings, you will also know that that kind of feels like loss, I guess, without going all that is an absolutely terrible loss. Anyways, and it just sucks. And it's been affecting me a lot more than I thought. As I stated, I do have major depressive disorder. I think is that actually the word for it? Now that I think about it, I don't actually fully know what the English word for it. Guess it doesn't really matter. My point with saying those things together, I guess, is that I've dealt with these feelings before, the depression and loss, but it's definitely hitting me a lot harder than I had expected, especially those things together. And to add to that, it's that time of the year, and usually I would celebrate Christmas together with that friend. I haven't really celebrated Christmas with my family for a few years before I even decided to go non-contact with them. But now I won't be celebrating Christmas or even New Year's with that friend either. And that has also kind of hit me pretty, I wouldn't say hard or something, but suddenly that realization that, oh, that I'm not gonna spend that time with that person. And in reality, anyone that I really care about. Because another thing for me is that I don't have a whole lot of friends. Now I am somewhat to blame for that. I'm not a very social person. And I'm fine with that. I do enjoy my own company. I don't really feel a need, I guess, for being social a lot of the time. Now that doesn't mean that I don't ever have those thoughts about being social or just doing something, but yeah. But also, as I've grown as an adult, I've also just had to learn that some friends are not really worth having. I guess you could say that some of them I've gone no contact with, but that's not really what I would say that I've done. Not contacting someone because you don't really align with them anymore, and just kind of gradually phasing out of that relationship, I wouldn't really call going no contact, because if they ever wrote to me, I would probably write back or contacted me. But if they suggested that, hey, let's go hang out, I would probably say, no, I'm not interested. And it's also just been like as a journey as an adult, trying to learn about myself and who I am and what I want to do in life and what my values are, that I've drifted away from many of those friends that I had for many years. Actually, one of them I was friends with since we went to kindergarten together, and we were, well, best friends for over 20 years. And I just eventually had to abandon that relationship because I wasn't really gaining anything from it anymore. We had a lot of great memories together, and our communication together was very unique and obviously very friendly, as you would expect from two people who've known each other for more than 20 years. But most of the time, really what it would be for me is just a lot of frustration when trying to communicate with that person, and the fact that we couldn't really have conversations where we talk to each other on more than current events or something funny. And I love having those conversations, but I would also love to be able to do more than that. And while I wasn't great at communicating that, I still feel like I tried my best to do that, and that wasn't reciprocated. And in the end, I felt that I needed to distance myself from that person. And I really wish that I never had felt that need. And there were probably a million kinds of ways or just things that I could have done different from the beginning to try and have the kind of relationship that I thought that I had. And that's also one of the things, is that I kind of thought that we had a relationship where we could talk to each other about things. But, you know, I never really got anything. And that eventually I just kind of realized that oh yeah, what am I gaining except really anxiety when I'm being with this person? Can I actually bring up this subject to them? Is this something that we can talk about, or do I kind of have to ignore it, pretend like it isn't bothering me, or just anything? I don't know. It's very difficult to explain. And that's not to say that you have to gain something from a relationship in order for a relationship to be worth having. And that's fine, because, you know, that's kind of just how things are. Things are complicated, and especially people and relationships. even more when you are a person like me and ADHD, depressed, autistic person. It's a lot, I know. Now, I also know that I am a lot, but I do try to practice self-love and self-care in the way that I feel capable of. Because if you yourself are autistic or have ADHD or suffer from depression or deal with depression, you'll know how difficult just normal everyday task can be to complete. And in my case, when you combine all three, you have just a recipe for disaster. And when I mix that with that feeling of, well, loneliness, of not having my caretakers, the people who were supposed to be my caretakers, and my best friend, really, as my other best friend, I guess, both best friends now, and yeah, I haven't made dinner for myself in a week, and I actually like making food. I like making good food. I just haven't had the will to do it. I've also been working on episode 16 at this point of my current vintage story series, and I've gotten pretty far, but I've just kind of been sitting on it for a while. And even though I like making videos, I've just haven't felt that motivation, I guess, to do anything about it. What I have felt like doing, I guess, is sitting in my sofa, not really knowing what to do. And I don't like that, especially because I had just had a decent period where I did feel motivated and I guess compelled to make the videos that I do and to work on them on a somewhat regular basis. And now I don't really feel that drive. I'm kind of hoping that by not only talking about this, but also just recording this, that I will try and, or hopefully find some of that motivation and drive that I had for a little while. We'll see. I don't know really what else there is to talk about for me. I think I needed to, and I wanted to talk about this in a sort of, well, first of all, very different way than what I usually do. I usually make these sort of, well, I would call them entertaining videos, but that's subjective. I don't really do this more slower and talking about stuff like this, and I love making the videos that I do. I did enjoy talking about this, but I will say that it's very difficult for me to multitask on trying to articulate what I actually want to say and what my feelings are and just everything, while also playing a video game. And perhaps I should have done this as a voiceover instead, but I do also believe that it could be a good exercise for me to do those things in, and correct me if I'm wrong about the usage of that word, but to do that in conjunction with each other. But I do think that that's gonna have to be it for that. I know that there aren't really all that many people subscribed to me, but if you are already subscribed to me and you were perhaps expecting something different, well, I'm not really going to apologize, but I will say that don't worry, I will return to form once I do feel that motivation again, once I pick myself up on my feet. Pick myself up by the bootstrap. Oh, I hate that expression so much. I wanted to make this, and if this is your first video or first time watching any of my videos, I can only say that I recommend you check out my other videos, although they are quite different from this. And I can also say that if you do want to watch more of stuff like this, I would very much appreciate it if you left a comment telling me why, first of all, and just that is something that you would like to see. I would greatly appreciate it, because feedback is, you know, the only way that I can tell if what I'm doing is, well, not really good, but something that people enjoy the same way that I enjoyed. That was a very long-winded way for me to basically tell you to leave a like and comment down below. Yeah. I don't think there's much more for me to say. I hope that you have a wonderful day, and you know, if you have anything that you'd like to share, feel free to do so. I hopefully will see you all very soon again. Goodbye, 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 bye, bye, goodbye, bye, bye.